given that they were reinstated rather quickly, I think it was more of a test to see the reaction of the journalists, where, the institutions that had their Twitter accounts suspended. And I also think kudos to Twitter for reacting quickly and reinstating them. But I think it was probably just more trying to test the waters to see what would happen. Technology is quite attractive. It's a nice solution. It's very technical. It's kind of like give a laptop to a child and eradicate poverty kind of thing. It's a quick fix. But I think really for it to work, the technology needs to take into account where are the flaws in the electoral system. And, just putting cameras in on the day of the election within that space isn't enough, because what's happening, in terms of where the votes are being bought and sold, it's happening way before the election day. So there's this fetishization of election day, all this investment in terms of the technical hardware, even including, kind of non-technical hardware, including boxes and things like that. But really, the flaws in the system are more structural and more political. So you had the schools and the kindergarten teachers, coercing their the parents of the children at the schools to vote in a particular way. You have very famously, certain oligarchs using their business interests to get their workers to vote in a particular way. So these are not happening on the day. So no amount of technology, no amount of high tech is going to capture that. I think, what we're seeing is people acting on their short-term interests in some instances, acting out of fear in other instances. And this is leading to a situation where, again, no amount of technology is going to capture that kind of skewing and problems of the electoral process. We have to wait and see what the results are, and to think about, what's going to happen. I would hope that it wouldn't be a reactive response in terms of just reacting, out of anger, out of frustration, but rather I think we need, civil society needs to be far more proactive. Why are voters willing to sell their votes? I think there needs to be much more kind of thinking about the periods between these elections and the type of work that's done in communities, in the grassroots, at the level of, also dealing with issues that lead to people to kind of think of themselves as, we don't have a voice. In terms of civil society, you had the observers this year, and I think this was a very interesting, the diaspora observers coming in order to ensure a level of transparency, a level of accountability, which I think is great. But again, I think, where I am concerned is the regime seemed to be happy to allow this to happen. So you have to ask the question of, well, why? And I think today we've got some of our answers, because what we found is that there were lots and lots of observer kind of initiatives created by many very, unknown NGOs, unknown organizations that seem to be sponsoring their own observation missions. I think, what we've seen globally is this growing mistrust. It's, Pankaj Mishra talks about the age of anger. We see fear, the politics of fear, the global disaffection in terms of not just political institutions and political elites, but the economic institutions and the economic system of neoliberal globalization, which has led to growing inequality, growing precarity. And Armenia is not immune to this. This has been going on. And I think, in terms of the political parties, yes, we've seen some new political parties, but again, it's very difficult for me now to think about what differentiates all of them apart from individual, charismatic leaders. I don't see any clear platforms, any clear kind of policy platforms of, okay, this is what we're going to do, and realistic policy platforms that are going to address the key issues. And here, I think we need to think about the key issues beyond the foreign policy, beyond the Karabakh issue. You need to also think about the domestic situation in terms of, 1/3 of the Armenian population lives in poverty, and that's official statistics. The demographic issue. So all of these are interconnected, and I think, in terms of policy approaches, that needs to be taken into consideration. It's great that the diaspora is engaged, and I hope that that will continue beyond the elections, because as I said, the election is one day out of 4 years or 5 years. What is needed is a much more consistent day-to-day approach to building people's awareness, to building that political education, that sense of I'm a citizen, I'm not going to sell my vote. I am a citizen, and I'm going to act differently in my everyday life. And I think unless that happens, we're going to find ourselves again in the same situation every 5 years.